There are 1,600 U.S. troops in Iraq and over the skies of Syria trying to kill the terrorists of ISIS. We're watching for fresh airstrikes this hour as the bombing campaign there enters its second week. In the middle of this all, President Obama sat down with 60 Minutes to try to explain why it falls upon the United States to take point on stopping this terrorist group.
America leads. We are the indispensable nation. We have capacity no one else has. Our military is the best in the history of the world. And when trouble comes up anywhere in the world, they don't call Beijing, they don't call Moscow, they call us.
The president also gave a very clear message as to how his administration misjudged the terrorist threat of ISIS. To paraphrase Harry Truman, the president said the buck stops there, at the desk of the intelligence community. The president made no mention of his reference in the New Yorker magazine in January to ISIS as a JV team of terrorists. Either way, the U.S. is now in the fight. In an interview, an ISIS fighter told CNN they've been ready for this for some time, adding that the airstrikes are not doing anything to slow their jihad. And now ISIS is surrounding a Kurdish stronghold in Syria, Kobani, and could lay siege to the city in a matter of days. Here now with more details, CNN Chief National Security Correspondent Jim Sciutto. Jim, we heard the president say last night that the U.S. misread how grave a threat ISIS posed because the intelligence on ISIS, he said, was just flat out wrong.
Well, I will say that I've heard questions, shall we call them, about the idea that it was the intelligence community alone that underestimated ISIS, because the fact is that there were warnings both in public comments and in classified intelligence reports about ISIS's growing ability and its growing ambitions to capture territory across Syria and Iraq and beyond.
The message was clear, the president seeming to place responsibility for underestimating ISIS's rise firmly and solely on the intelligence community.
Well, I think our head of the intelligence community, Jim Clapper, has acknowledged that I think they underestimated what had been taking place in Syria.
Listen to the public testimony of intelligence and administration officials in recent months, however, and the early warnings appeared clear as well. Here's the administration's point man on Iraq, Brett McGurk, from February 11th this year, 4 months before ISIS's sweeping offensive in northern Iraq.
Its current leader, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, is a designated global terrorist under U.S. law and we believe is currently based in Syria. His mission, as clearly stated in his own statements, is to carve out a zone of governing territory from Baghdad through Syria to Lebanon.
And here's the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, General Michael Flynn, 1 week earlier.
How imminent of a threat does the resurgence of al-Qaeda affiliates pose for the regional stability there?
It's increasingly a concern that we're going to have to pay very close attention to.
And here's McGurk again last November, a full 7 months before ISIS's advance.
The more that this al-Qaeda network gains strength and gains roots in western Iraq, the greater the threat will be. That's why we have to go after that in a very serious way.
Intelligence officials tell CNN that the agencies issued multiple reports warning of ISIS's rise in the months before it expanded from its base in Syria into Iraq, detailing both its growing capability and its growing ambitions to take over territory as far as Baghdad. The threat to the capital highlighted the very month before ISIS stormed across the border from Syria. Just last week, CIA Director John Brennan said the CIA also issued a broader strategic warning about ISIS.
Well, I certainly think that the intelligence community did a very good job on both of those issues as far as trying to ensure that the policymakers were informed about the evolving facts on the ground.
The White House defended the president's statement today.
Everybody knew that there was a threat that was posed by ISIL, but what nobody could predict, as the director said, is the willingness of the Iraqi security force to stand up and fight for their own country.
Where all sides were surprised was the lightning-fast dissolution of the Iraqi army in the face of ISIS's advance, something that apparently no one saw coming.
I spoke today to Representative Adam Schiff. He's on the House Intelligence Committee, and he made the point that there is an intelligence report about just about everything. So it's one thing, Jake, of course, to say that there's a report about this. It's another thing to say that the intelligence community singled out a particular report or a particular threat in the mountain of threats that the administration or that the intelligence community, frankly, is dealing with. On the other hand, fact is that this administration chose to withdraw all troops from Iraq, chose not to get involved in Syria earlier, and both those things, I've been told as well by multiple officials, contributed to both those places being a relative intelligence black hole. So, I mean, there's a lot of blame to go around here on ISIS, both on underestimating, but also in setting the pieces in place so that you couldn't get the best intel possible on the threat that they would face going forward.
Brett McGurk making it very clear last year that this was a
Last
serious
November.
threat. Jim Sciutto, excellent reporting.